10 years ago now, I dropped out of college after my sophomore year. I had this burning desire to pursue writing professionally, and things have kind of worked out. Today, I'm a professional writer, making comics, video games, and more. But just because I'm doing okay now doesn't mean I don't have any regrets or that I didn't make mistakes along the way. So in this video, I wanted to share my perspective on dropping out and discuss the ways in which it helped me reach my goals, and also the ways in which it was kind of an obstacle. We're gonna start with why I dropped out and how I feel about those reasons now, the things I wish I knew that might have affected my decision at the time, and then I'm gonna end with some advice from the lessons I've learned that I hope can be helpful to you if you're interested in pursuing a creative career or if you're considering dropping out. So first, let's talk about why I dropped out of college. Reason number one, writing as a career is not education dependent. It really depends on networking and having the right samples. Looking back now, I still stand behind this reason. I feel that most of the practical skills that are important for a creative career are best developed outside of college. Now, there's notable exceptions. You can build a great network in college, but you can also develop a lot of those kinds of relationships just by making stuff and engaging the local community around you that's interested in that. The second reason is that I felt like college was taking time away from pursuing my dreams as a writer. If I was pursuing a creative writing degree, maybe that wouldn't be true. But I wasn't. And so when I was at school, I was juggling classes, extracurricular activities, I was working 2 campus jobs, I was trying to have some kind of social life, and so that left very little time to write. In hindsight, from a practical perspective, I don't think this is the strongest reason. There's a lot of other options I could have explored before fully dropping out, like prioritizing my writing over the jobs I was working or the extracurriculars I wanted to participate in. I was very much all or nothing, and I don't think that mentality served me well. If I was in a place where creative writing was already paying all of my bills, then maybe leaving for this reason would have made sense. But after I dropped out, I still had to make money, which meant that even though I wasn't in school anymore, I was now juggling writing with the need and pressure to make money to be able to live my life. So now looking back, it seems like a no-brainer to juggle writing around my college work, because that's a skill set that comes into play a lot. Whatever you want to do creatively isn't always going to pay the bills, especially at the beginning of your career. And so it's important to know how to balance the time you want to spend for your creative pursuits around whatever jobs you need to work to make the money you need to live. Now, let's talk about the things I knew that, even if they wouldn't have changed my mind, would have at least affected my decision making. First, the number one thing I wish I knew was that the money that you make early in your career is some of the most valuable money you'll ever earn. Any money that you earn when you're younger has a very long-term impact on your ability to become financially independent and eventually retire. And in creative careers in particular, financial independence is a massive asset. Think about how well you could pursue your passion if you didn't need to worry about money. By choosing to drop out, I had tons of freedom and time, but I had none of the money that I needed to take advantage of that freedom. I couldn't finance projects, I couldn't travel as easily as I maybe would have liked to be able to meet people and network, and in the end, I found myself pretty stuck. I had all these ambitions and no practical means of realizing them. The money I was making after dropping out was really just enough to get by. And I had a lot of advantages on my side. I was able to move back home, and so I wasn't paying rent for a long time after leaving college. This is not a finance channel, so I'm not gonna go into the details of compound returns and why that early money is so important, but I really hope that anyone watching this doesn't make the mistake that I made and at least thinks the financial side of their journey through. The second thing I wish I knew is that jobs can really provide valuable experience and access. I was, and probably still am, a very stubborn person, and so I was very focused on following the path that I wanted to chart for myself. Over time, as I broadened my perspective, I realized that some jobs would have actually offered me opportunities to work on large-scale projects that I would have needed to be extremely lucky to get to work on independently. On my own, I was mostly stuck on smaller-scale projects. They were the only kind that I could really afford to produce. That made it really hard to actually build the kind of experience I needed to realize my professional ambitions. By the time I did find myself wanting a job for the experience or even the financial stability, my resume and my portfolio were both kind of lackluster. When I looked at my friends who followed a more traditional path, they gained a lot of experience I didn't have. The third thing I wish I knew is that focus is key. I received tons of warnings about this, but I didn't fully listen and I didn't fully understand. If you want to accomplish your number one goal, you need to be willing to sacrifice your number 2, 3, and 4 goal. It's not the little side distractions that you don't really care about that you need to be concerned about. It's the things that are important to you that are going to compete for your attention the most. I thought I could do it all. I thought that by working on separate goals at the same time, they would coincide and sort of help each other progress. That wasn't the reality. By splitting your attention, you end up making less progress on each thing, and it's much harder to have meaningful success in any one domain. On the other hand, if you really focus hard on your number one goal and then are able to find success there, it's a lot easier to use that as a launching pad to then move into tackling your number 2, 3, and 4 goals in the future. The last thing I wish I knew is that dropping out has a really high social cost. The thing that made this the hardest is probably that I left the state. I was going to college in Oregon and I came back to California, and I tried to keep in touch with my friends from college, but most of them were in their own bubble, and those relationships just slowly fell apart because we weren't in the same worlds anymore. It took years for me to really get to a place where I stopped feeling isolated and lonely. Those feelings were really present my first couple years after dropping out. I do still have a few friends from college today, but most of those relationships are relationships that redeveloped or reconnected after those friends graduated. Back when I first dropped out though, it really hurt me, and it took a long time for that to heal. I found myself a lot of times wishing that I had stayed in school just to graduate and maintain those relationships, because I think I would have had a lot more of them and continued to be really close to a lot of those people. That brings us to some advice. I know a lot has changed over the last 10 years since I dropped out, but I'm pretty sure most of this still applies. This will also be especially relevant if you want to build a creative career. My first piece of advice is stay open and flexible. Don't stay attached to your ideas of what your career will look like. I did say that focus matters, but it's also important to explore opportunities as they come along, just as long as you're not exploring every opportunity. Whenever you're considering changing your path, including dropping out, ask yourself why. Are you running away from your path, or are you running towards something new? You should think about this a lot, in particular if you're considering dropping out and not enjoying your time in college. I really enjoyed college, so I knew that my desire to leave was rooted in my passion for writing and not my dislike of school. Without that, I actually would have felt less certain about dropping out, and it would have pushed me more to consider transferring schools or changing my degree program to something more relevant to me. Second piece of advice: check your privilege. I was privileged enough that my mom was paying for my degree, so I didn't have to take out loans. That same privilege would have also meant that I could have obtained a degree without one of the major downsides that often accompanies it: the debt. Being able to get a degree debt-free is a huge advantage. You get a lot of benefits and a lot of immediate positives in terms of the kinds of jobs that you can apply to and be considered for without that huge debt hanging over your shoulders, which can be a massive burden. That ties into my last piece of advice, which is remember that creative careers take a long time. If someone had tried to tell me this when I was dropping out, I would have taken it as a personal affront and them saying that they weren't confident in my abilities as a creative. I've been writing for my entire life, and it took me 10 years after dropping out to get to the point where I'm making a living and running a small business as a writer. The early years in a creative career tend to be the slowest, with small projects making the most sense to pursue and produce. In the grand scheme of things, waiting 2 more years or 4 years to get my degree wouldn't have been a long time to really lose, but I was so impatient. If I just kept writing as I went through college, I could have taken the same risks after graduating that I took when I dropped out, except I would have had a degree to fall back on that would have opened up way more opportunities for me at the time. Those opportunities would have helped me gain valuable professional experience or just make more money to put aside towards my projects. I hope all of this helps, and I hope it doesn't give me too much anxiety from thinking about the fact that I'm gonna be 30 soon. I think after talking about all of this, it's important to mention that I still don't regret dropping out of college. But if I'd known then what I know now, I might have made a different choice, and that path probably would have been good too. So let me know if this is helpful to you. I really hope that it is, and if you have the time, share your story below, whether you did drop out or are considering dropping out. I'd love to read about it.